Thanks, honourable members, for taking the time to come here today. One of the reasons that I asked a few members to see if there was any interest in holding a hustings was really, as a member that only elected in 2016, I didn't really understand how it all happened, and I just think it's a good opportunity for us to see what prospective candidates can offer for the role of president. So that was the point in bringing it forward. Obviously I'll chair it, and whenever there's a question asked, it'll go to both candidates equally. And obviously, as it's the President's role, and it's an impartial role for Parliament, certainly no political questions will be allowed. Members, the candidates will do a brief introduction, and then we'll go into questions. So thank you very much. Lawrence, can you start first?
Yeah, very happy to, Julie. Fast am I, and thank you, Julie, for arranging this. I think this hustings I welcome it, is because it's about being open and transparent, and it's good practice. And I would suggest that hustings are helpful in all roles. We obviously experience it as MHKs, MLCs do. This is about President. Obviously, you've got the likes of Speaker in the future to consider as well. And it's quite relevant because of what we just changed for the Chief Minister's role, given more time and opportunity in that case for members to decide who they want to be in that particular role. So I do welcome it. Clearly, Julian and I have known very well to all their members, so I'm not going to go into a lengthy background and experience and so forth, and I want to give more time for questions. But Julian and I would just first of all say is that we've got a very good relationship, not least the fact that we're constituent MHKs. We've worked together now for what is 10 years. I believe we've represented the people of Rushen and the island exceptionally well, and that's why we were both returned last term. And of course I have fully supported him in the Speaker's role, having seconded him, and believe he is an excellent Speaker, and certainly could be a very good President at the same time. In terms of my particular reason why I'm here is that simply because I've been asked. I decided some time ago that I was not going to stand for MHK for personal reasons, and when I made that decision, shortly afterwards, the president of Tynwald, Steve Roden, decided he was going to retire, and I was asked by a number of members, would you be willing to stand? And as a manxman, that I don't believe there is any other greater honour than potentially sitting and presiding over the president of Tynwald. So I accepted that. In my due diligence, I went to speak not just to Steve, but to past presidents and other people influential who know the history of the role and what its responsibilities are, because when you enter politics, there really is no qualification. You are thrown in the deep end. You're an MLC, you're an MHK, you're a minister, you're a speaker, you're president, and all of a sudden you're just thrown in the deep end and you've really got to get on with it. You might have some inductions. This particular role is exceptionally difficult. Why? Because the decision will be made just before the sitting of the biggest order paper for 5 years. So I had a look at what the roles and responsibilities are of the President, and it was clear that it sort of broke down to 4 different areas. You had the presiding role, which is the presiding role over LegCo and over Tynwald, and that's all about the authorising the order paper, the authoritative position with regards to standing orders. But there is a process in there that ensures that's put in place, and that's a briefing with the clerks. And that's done Monday prior to Tynwald, and I do thank Roger for offering that opportunity next Monday. The other point is the role and responsibility for members. And that's really about, I believe, the continual professional development, the study visits, the understanding of the wider political community of the world, not just the world we live in here on the Isle of Man, but the wider world, and how it does work elsewhere. The modernisation, I think, of the workplace, it will come up a few times here, but the other element with regards to members, I think, is the pastoral and well-being aspect that a president will play. President clearly is impartial. But I know, having spoken to this president, the last past president, the opportunity of sitting down with the president to have that impartial discussion about any matter of things is really of great value, and I think the president plays a very important role there. The operation of the Tynwald office, as we know downstairs, is very important. Now, of course, the President is a member of the Tynwald Management Committee, but he does have to play, I think, a very active role. And of course, you know, whether that be CPD, modernising work practices and ensuring that you've got the right resources for all those parliamentary committees, etc., which seems to continue to grow, is really important. The last but not least is the ambassadorial role that the President holds. And in that particular case, that's all about the, I guess, the outreach. We all know about the CPA. I've been a member for 10 years and done study visits of my own, perhaps not enough, and that's a penalty, I guess, in terms of being a minister. You don't really have that opportunity to do as much of that as you like, but I do think it's exceptionally valuable. But I also think that outreach goes a lot further than the CPA. I think we could do a lot more with regards to our heritage, particularly with regards to our Celtic heritage, our Scandinavian heritage, and creating stronger links through the ambassadorial position that the President is. So in terms of my background and skills, I think you all know me with regards to what I can achieve and what my skills are. But what you may not know is, prior to me being in politics, I come from a business background. I spent 15 years in America, had my own business, fairly sizable business, and I was very, very active in a whole host of different organisations, not least a board member on the British American Chamber of Commerce, and done a lot of ambassadorial, and even when I was in America, represented the Isle of Man government for the Department of Tourism and Leisure and the old Department of Trade and Industry in a number of activities. So I believe I understand the ambassadorial role, but I have, in my political role, been very active there. As a minister, you get the opportunity to be part of the British-Irish Council, whereas you are interacting at a very high level, and also the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council, which has been very valuable as well at the same time. So in essence there, for me, if I were to be elected, I would continue in where I started, and that is following all the principles of public life. And when you think of those, it's selflessness, it's objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, integrity, and leadership. So with that, I'll pass over.
Paul Moulton, and thank you, Julie, for organising this hustings today. I'd like to see the role of President develop into a full-time role. It's paid full-time, it should be a full-time role. That includes responsibilities for the training and development of members, advocacy of Parliament at home and abroad, and in moving our Parliament forward by strengthening it and promoting its activities with education and outreach programmes. You'll be aware that over my 15 years in Tynwald, I've always been passionate about parliamentary matters, having served on the Tynwald Standards and Members' Interest Committee, Tynwald Management Committee, Standing Orders Committee of both Tynwald and Keys. I suppose what I offer is continuity as implementation plans for the Register of Business are developed over the course of the summer. I also have a detailed knowledge of standing orders, which I would hope to assist as the new senior clerking team steps up. During my time as Speaker, I've acted as the Chairman of the Emoluments Committee, modernising the pay structures, navigating the thorny issues around the functioning of Tynwald. And having served on at least 20 parliamentary committees, chairing many of them, I did actually produce the paper that paved the way for the current scrutiny system. You'll all be familiar with my style as presiding officer in Keys and in Tynwald, preferring to inject humour into difficult situations and encouraging members to tackle the policy rather than the person. However, I'm only too aware of the need to retain order within the chambers and wouldn't hesitate to provide far more robust challenge if it's required. I should perhaps also mention my charity work around the island at Southern Befrienders, which is the reason for Tynwald Balls, which I know you all can't wait to be in, the Royal British Legion and others. Looking outward, the Isle of Man's always played an active part in the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, and for my part, I've chaired the CPA Branch Executive Committee for the last 10 years and have been a member for my entire 15 years. I've been passionate about ensuring training opportunities are made as widely available as possible. I'm also the Vice Chairman of the Small Branches Network and also the Vice Chairman of the Commonwealth Association of Public Accounts Committees. These are roles that provide opportunities for our island to be involved in training parliamentarians by bringing them here, allowing us to promote our island to a global audience, as we did with the Kaiba Paktunkwa and other visiting committees and clerks. As an active member of the Commonwealth Speakers and Presiding Officers Conference, I have the contacts to further this cause and have already signed up to undertaking training for the Commonwealth Association of Public Accounts Committees due to my own 10 years service on our Public Accounts Committee. Domestically, I've brought every Year 6 student from all the schools in the constituency to Tynwald every year. However, I believe that the President needs to make the same offer to all primary schools across our island. Sponsoring the award for Best Contributor at Junior Tynwald has also been my way of giving back to that institution which acted as my inspiration and has also so much untested potential to engage with our island's youth. I'm responsible for having commenced the current CPD programme for members, which has been well received, and I believe the experience that I have is suited to personally taking a lead and continuing its development into the future. For example, mentoring members on request and creating personal development plans to advise on the tools available to fulfil objectives. Importantly, I'm acutely conscious of the boundaries between political and procedural support and believe the role of President lends itself to this function based on strictly non-political foundations. It must be remembered that the President has no executive power outside of the Chamber, and ambitions are curtailed by being just one member of the various committees that run Tynwald. It's been a source of frustration that we have hitherto been unable to persuade BBC Parliament to pick up the tab for the kitting out of our Chamber as part of the next net export of funds from our island to the BBC. Tynwald does need to be streamed, and it does, as does the work of both branches and the committees, to make them more accessible and available to the public. I feel that a parliamentary commission is needed to give a legal identity to what is currently just the Clerk of Tynwald's office and really an extension of government, as well as a review and possible rationalisation of the 8 committees that run all aspects of Tynwald, and I've managed to get them down from 11 to 8 so far, but I still think there's more to be done. The standing orders of Keys and Tynwald are in need of modernisation. The last root and branch review was 2006. This needs to be done in a coordinated manner with the branches, and I believe it must involve the public. You'll see that I'm passionate about Parliament, and I ask you to judge me on my record in that regard, and I hope you'll give me the opportunity to serve Tynwald as your President. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, both members. Really helpful, insightful into past and what you'll do in the future, which is really helpful. Okay, we'll open up the floor to questions. Obviously, for those online, if you could put your hand up, and I'll come over to you. But first, Mr. Quine.
Thank you, and thanks to both Mr. Speaker and to Mr. Skelly for excellent introductions there. Would you see the progression of the role of President in the ambassadorial role, by which I mean becoming an integral part of Isle of Man PLC, getting out around the world, particularly with our friends and neighbours in the British Isles, but more wider into the Commonwealth and the European Union, to act as part of perhaps a trade delegation in order to bring inward investments into the island, so playing an integral role in that development. Thank you.
Yep. No, thank you, Paul. I think that's a good question. The ambassadorial role is quite different from a trade delegation. However, I do think there is an active role for the President to play in this particular case in terms of dealing with the counterparts in other jurisdictions and reaching out to them. As I said in my opening introduction there, I believe there is an opportunity. Obviously, we got the near neighbours, but I think, particularly with regards to the Celtic nations and the Scandinavian nations, with regards to where we have a really strong, close history, kinship, etc., and opportunity to open those doors. So, yes, I do think there is opportunity, and the CPA in its own right is a massive opportunity for us. Having been involved with the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council, that's all about the trade opportunities that go along with that. But it is a huge organisation to many jurisdictions, and we're a small nation and a small resource, and how far, where do we need to focus our efforts? And that's why I would suggest where we've got, I would regard as warm and close friends.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Quine. In terms of the ambassadorial role, yeah, that's why I've sort of put myself out there within the CPA. As the small branches vice chair, I stood as chair and was unsuccessful. I'm vice chairman of the small branches conference and also the Commonwealth Association of Public Accounts committees. And also in recent years, it's been more the case that the CPA have been phoning me to ask and do training around the world. And so, for example, I was invited to go down and do a post-election seminar in the Gambia. Didn't cost the Manx taxpayer a penny apart from my time, because that's they just wanted someone with the experience to go out there and do it. So I've been lucky to be able to do that, and I would certainly be happy to continue doing that. In terms of more locally, obviously I've been the Tynwald representative on the British Irish Parliamentary Association for the last 5 years, and that's helped develop relationships north, south, east and west around the British Isles, but also over time the contacts with the House of Commons, House of Lords, as well as that BIPA network and indeed the military. In terms of taking part in an overseas trade delegation, I would definitely see that as something that would be government owned. But I think we all pull together as Team Isle of Man when needed in order to support that. So if it was something that government wanted the President to do, then I would be happy to do it, because I don't think that sets you up in any way of a conflict with domestic politics, selling the Isle of Man abroad. And that would be the only sort of thing that would sit in the back of the brain, just to make sure that there was no conflict with domestic politics. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Bill.
Thank you, Julie. I'm keen to understand, are you modernisers or not, particularly in terms of the hours that we operate, which are very old-fashioned. So just in the last 5 years, there's been so many instances when Tynwald has gone way beyond 8 o'clock, usually when Graham Regine or June Washington proposes that we go on late into the night, and I usually stand up and say, this is a madness, because it's important, we should be doing this at a sensible hour, and why do we start at 10:30? So why do we have the longest summer recess of any parliament or assembly in the British Isles? I moved a motion that we would actually come back in September rather than leave in July and come in October. Where do you stand on these quite important issues, which I think would provide an indication of whether you're modernisers or not? Thank you.
Okay, two issues there about modernising. In terms of the hours, then yeah, I will say that I have preferred to sit late and get things done, but that is as an MHK and as Speaker. Obviously, as President, you sit when the Court wants to sit, and that is something that is a matter for the Court rather than for matters as an individual. So I suppose on that perspective, if I do become President, Mr. Shim should be delighted to know that I won't get a vote in that decision. In terms of the issue about when we sit the hours and the months and days we sit, I think that's part of that fundamental review of standing orders that I talked about earlier that's been needed. We haven't had one root and branch since 2006. It's time that was done again, and that involves all members but also the public as well, to make sure that we're both an accessible service but also something that fulfills the needs of a majority of Tynwald members as well. Also with regards to being a moderniser, I'd also say that we're trying to move things along as far as we can within the budget constraints that we've got of the technology. And so one of the things that's already starting to happen is that this place is going to be far more kitted out in terms of being able to partake in briefings and so on virtually, and having the right sound and audio equipment to be able to do that. Being able to do Tynwald virtually for those that have needed it, and I've also been able to extend that into the Keys, because we've had the technological ability and capacity to do that. So that's I think the track record of definitely being forward-leaning and wanting to modernise, certainly. But you know, I will more than happily sit whenever the Court wants.
But you're not going to push it.
I'm a servant of the Court in that regard.
You've taken the stance, you're actually quite happy with the hours, you prefer the way they are at the moment.
No, I think they need questioning, because I said we need that fundamentally. It's in standing orders. We need to look whole scale at standing orders, but that's a matter for the voting members and the public, rather than the President.
Yeah, fair challenge that, Bill, I'd say. Very simply, reform is in the hand of the members. So it's up to the members to decide and make that decision. The President is impartial in that respect. Starting earlier, having shorter recesses, I had no issue with that whatsoever. So, but the reform is absolutely in the hands of the members. In terms of modernising practices, I think that's an area where the Tynwald Management Committee, which obviously President is one member of that particular committee, there is an opportunity there, I think, with regards to the technological advancements as we see here today. See 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members here online, and can we take that to another level? Yes, we've proven we can do that with what we've just lived through for the last 18 months. So can we go further in respect to that? But I think it's also beyond, not just Tynwald and there are 2 chambers there that could do that, but I also think our work and practices within this building here too can be modernised.